Welcome back to another Alvado video. Now in today's video we're going to be watching a game played by Setsuko. Setsuko started his stream out the other day at about 1400 LP and ended the stream at around 1600 LP, solidifying his spot as rank 2 in NA. But he's not the only one that's been climbing. Your boy has also been climbing. This is my my previous games, and I finally made it to Challenger. I did it in under 250 games. I'm pretty proud of that. I like playing around AP. Tier start is one of my favorite starts. I like starting tier. Setsuko likes starting bow. I'm curious what one of your guys' favorite starts are. Let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into this game. Really did think that the previous meta was a really good one, but after the C patch, I actually think this meta might be even better. We can see that Bel'Veth and Aesol, that now they're clickable units along with other units just being balanced in conjunction, that there really is so many ways that you can play this game, and it actually does seem, extremely flexible. You can see his first augment here. It was Heart, Second Wind, or Ascension. He doesn't have any AP items. You really do not want to go for Hearts if you don't have at least a single tier. Of course, he's not going to go for Heart. Ascension, you really want to have like a solid game plan for how you're going to be playing around Ascension, whether either you have, a strong front line or you have the pieces to build a comp that involves stalling and stuff like that. But the thing is that, he doesn't have a strong front line. He doesn't have any of that stuff. Second Wind is never a bad option, so he just goes ahead and picks Second Wind. He really doesn't want to have to reroll that augment there. And he's just kind of holding on to a bunch of pairs. He's kind of, staying extremely flexible. He built Titans because bow, chain, that basically almost always going to be Titans in that spot unless you're, willing to slam RFC. But now that Jax is not really that strong of a carry in this meta, you don't really want to, there's not really any other good holders for RFC, so it's almost always a Titan slam in this spot. He loses the first round, and then the second round, he's able to get Underground in. He ends up selling his Ashe, and then he puts Titans on this GP because he found a GP2. And yeah, so now he's just trying to just play around Underground lose streak. I don't think there's that much that happens for the rest of this stage. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. Okay, so here we are on the last fight of stage 2. You can see kind of the resemblance of his previous board. All he basically did was just add in a Jax, and then he built Last Whisper and put it on Kale. I want to draw your attention to the Sivir in the shop. Considering he's playing around AD, he really wants to make sure he holds units that play around that sort of comp. So he ends up selling the Renekton pair and holding the Sivir instead to make sure that he could still make the econ threshold, but he could also hold the Sivir. Now, it's pretty important for later in the game, but for now, just know that he chose to hold that Sivir, right? He ended up getting a 10 gold for the first Underground cash out, and he just went for it because 10 gold is extremely strong at this stage of the game. And he doesn't know if he wants to be playing Underground in any later than that, so he just goes ahead and takes it anyways. You can see that he got dropped Sword, Cloak, and Glove there, and he ends up just making BT. Now, the reason behind making BT is because he's considering playing around Bel'Veth or Zed, even though he does want to leave like the Samira sure shot line open. He's just making the best items that he has right now. He wants to kill this cloak, so he kills the cloak with BT. We can now see his second augment, which ends up being a hero augment. Now, he really struggled with how he wanted to make his board in the previous round to guarantee that he didn't get, mort dogged by this augment here. He kind of ends up getting mort dogged by it anyways, and because he really doesn't want either of the Vayne hero augments, he had to play Duelist if he wanted to keep Underground in. So he just kind of had to bite the bullet, but what ends up happening is that he actually gets Unrelenting Force Vi. Now, if you don't know what Unrelenting Force does, it's essentially the Titan's item built into Vi. So every single time Vi gets damaged, she gets increased AD, AP, and armor and MR. Which is exactly what Titans does, and the thing is that these items on this Unrelenting Force Vi is actually basically BIS. BT and Titans are really strong on this sort of Vi because if you're getting so much more damage output and you're getting so much more tankiness with the Titans, then that means that you're able to dish out some pretty, decent damage. And so the BT is making it harder, or is like healing you up because you're dealing damage, and then you're getting even more tanky, and then you're dealing even more damage, and it could just kind of spirals out of control. And sometimes fights will like wind up where this Vi is just, a really powerful unit on a late game board. And if she has, both the Titans stacked from Unrelenting Force and the Titans from, the Titans item that she has, then, she becomes very powerful. So he kind of just pivots his comp into this, and now he's considering rerolling Vi, and that's why holding the Sivir was so important, because he got that one extra Sivir, so he's going to be rerolling Sivir along with this Vi. I want to draw your attention to how he's positioning his backline. It's pretty well understood that clumping up your backline is not really what you want to do for this set, but the thing is that it's still stage 3. So you don't really have to worry about too many of the units being on other players' boards that punish clumping in the backline, because you're really worried about, like Urgot, Fiddlesticks, Asol, Janna, Talia. So many of these units punish clumping, even units like Zed. Like if you get a Zed that gets hackered in the backline and you have a bunch of units next to each other, then his spin kind of like hits all of them and takes them out. But like I said, it's currently stage 3, so he's okay with clumping his backline, and the reason why that's better for his board at this point in time is because he has this last whisper on this Senna. He really wants to make sure that all of his units in the back there target the same unit, and there's a lot higher chance of that happening if all of them are clumped together. You can imagine a front line where, a lot of units in the middle are, or, let's say there's 4 frontline units in the middle, right? If his units are not clumped, then this Ezreal and the Sivir might target different units than the Senna is targeting, and then he's not getting as much value from this last whisper. So as the game goes on later, you're going to notice that he's going to end up declumping his backline because he doesn't want to get punished by, like, people are going to be able to start having units that punish clumping, so he's going to declump. And now we can see the final hero augment of the game. Weighing the benefits between Celestial Blessing and Thrill of the Hunt, he thinks Thrill of the Hunt is going to be that much better, so he goes for Thrill. Now the reason behind this is because he thinks that the Vi is not going to be doing enough damage where the healing from Celestial Blessing is going to make that much of a difference. But it has enough damage where it actually can kill some units, so it's actually going to be proccing this Thrill a good amount. Now TFT is one of these games where diminishing returns plays a really big role in how you should be building carries. Like if you have too much AD on a unit, then you don't want to build like even more AD. It's normally not that good. You want to build damage multipliers, you want to build like Runans, you want to build armor shred, and generally, you're going to get more value off of building items like that instead of just building like AD. But the thing is that healing in this game doesn't really have much diminishing returns, especially in the case where this Vi is, scaling not like infinitely, but she's getting so much benefit from getting the Titan stacks and the Unrelenting Force stacks. So healing just scales really well with this team and with this Vi. I haven't really been talking too much about how he's been playing the game. That's because he's basically just playing a 2-cost reroll comp. Now it's a very creative 2-cost reroll comp. It's one that, I haven't seen very many people like play a build like this. And it, it really shows how creative a player like Setsuko can be. But basically all he's doing is just rolling above 50 gold on level 6, and he's just looking to hit the holding on Vi's, he's holding on Lee Sin's, he's holding on Sivirs. And that's basically all he's been doing for the entirety of the game. So he ends up getting an Aphelios off of Carousel, and he has two Reforgers from the previous underground cashouts. So it goes ahead and just reforges the chain, and then he moves over the items to this Aphelios. Aphelios, even at 1-star, actually is a pretty strong unit. because of the recent buffs. So he's actually doesn't really mind carrying this Aphelios 2, even if he has no chance. I mean, he doesn't mind carrying this Aphelios 1, even if he has no chance of hitting this Aphelios 2 for a really long time. Now he's starting to get pretty low here, so he rolls a lot of his gold in hopes that he hits this Vi 3 and then stabilizes around that. You can see he hits the Sivir 3 and he hits the Lee Sin 3, but he does not end up hitting the Vi 3. He's still 2 off of Vi. He's holding on to this Alistar because Alistar would be his next in because it would give him Ox Force and Aegis. I want to draw your attention to how he's positioning his units. You can see that he has his backline declumped. He's been declumping for a really long time, and he often clumps his front line. Now the reason behind that is to counter the Viego players. If you have not a single unit clumped up, then there's a small chance that he'll jump to like a random unit in the backline because no one is next to each other. But if you clump your front line, then he's going to always jump to the front line. He's going to get stuck on the front line until he kills the front line unit. Now we can see right here, he actually rolls all of his gold all the way down to 0, and he just barely is able to hit this Vi 3. And you can also see that he's actually on 1 HP, and he really needed to hit this Vi 3 or else he would have easily lost this round, and he would have gotten 7th. But look at right here, this is exactly where the thrill shines. The Vi, now that it's fully itemized, you can get max stacks, it's got second wind value, it's got this Protector's Vow, you know, it's really putting in some mad work. He does have 3 Sure Shot in. He doesn't really know, or I mean, he needs the level for another Sure Shot. He also ends up taking out Underground, even though he was 1 away from getting another cash out, because, you know, he's 1 HP. He really needs to make sure he has his strongest board in. He doesn't care about 10 gold. He cares about, you know, winning the game. So he was going to level for, you know, to put Underground back in, because you can take Underground out and put it back in and you'll still remain at the, you know, the previous amount of vault stacks that you had. The thing is, he finds this Senna and he doesn't have enough gold to actually level and play the Sona anyways. So he sells the Sona, he buys the Senna, he puts Senna back in, or he puts Senna in, and then he's able to get 4 Sure Shot, and now he's basically reached his his max cap. You can see he's able to get a top 4 in this lobby, but things are not looking good for him to try and like get this, you know, top 2. He has a Lee Sin 3. Lee Sin also feels pretty good after the recent buffs. He's definitely not like broken or anything. He still is like kind of flawed as a unit. He basically just shields and does like a tiny bit of damage. So he's never going to be like, you know, the star of the show. But he was rerolling 2 costs in this game. So, you know, getting this Lee Sin 3 is also like a pretty massive spike as well, and he's looking to itemize that on top of this Vi. He already has 3 of Aphelios. He could look to itemize this Sivir, but the thing is that items scale with items, so he was down to look for a Lee Sin item to keep it alive a little bit longer so that he could make more use out of this Sunfire Cape. You can see the way that he's positioning this Alistar. Since Alistar has Ox Force, you can often get like a little bit extra time of stall because the Ox Force is going to proc, and then he's going to take like a second for him to die. So he just puts the Ox Force unit in front of the big clump. He basically is just sending it in there to die to just stall for a little bit of time. And he keeps his like main tanks away from everything else so that when, you know, the rest of their board gets through the Alistar and transitions to the frontline units, Vi will probably have like a couple stacks by then, and then can actually make more use out of her HP because she has so much more armor now. He doesn't like any of the items he sees here. He actually just goes ahead and reforges it. And you might be thinking, oh, QSS, that's like a backline item, right? So that my units don't get stunned. But no, the thing is that, like I said before, items scale with items. And even though Lee Sin not getting CC'd isn't that big of a deal, you know, his shield is still like somewhat important, and it's a lot more value on this 2-item 3-star Lee Sin than it would be on like this Sivir with no items. USS frontline is generally pretty good. That's also why, you know, making sure that your carry isn't getting CC'd is really important, but sometimes making sure that your frontline unit isn't getting CC'd is even more important so that they can actually use their abilities to stall that much longer. And since he's running this 4 sure shot comp, you know, he really wants to stall for as long as possible so that his Aphelios can eventually just one-shot everyone with his Duskwave ability. Now he defaults just playing Duskwave for the rest of the game. Of course, he doesn't want to use the stun gun in this spot because it's his carry, but he doesn't even choose to, like, he doesn't even consider playing Onslaught. I think it's just because with 4 sure shot in, it's pretty valuable to just get like that second cast off to just like wipe the board after his AD is stacking so high. He ends up selling Janna that was on his board to put in Aegis. And the thing is that he thinks he beats the other guy every single time, but he would struggle against the 4 heart player. Or I don't know if he had 4 heart, but he has some amount of hearts. So he ends up just playing 4 Aegis, and I mean the other guy's also playing AP anyways. So Aegis is just better than this mana Janna. He positions his unit to try and make sure he gets the most value out of Shroud. He just puts this Alistar in front of the whole clump. His opponent chooses to not move because he knows he's going to get screwed over either way. And somehow he's able to turn this game where he was 1 HP, literally about to die, had like no money, and he was basically one Vi away from, you know, losing the game. And then he just hits the Vi, he hits the Lee Sin, he hits the Sivir, he hits the Aphelios. He's able to make a really strong board. He has a very strong front line. His augments work really well together. He's able to just make like a really strong comp. And then he's just stronger than everyone in the lobby, so he just wins the game. This meta is so flexible that you can just do things like that. Just utilize the knowledge that you have around the game and just make some comp that, you know, just works out together, and then yeah, just, I mean, win the game from there. It's that easy. Hopefully you learned something from this video. I thought this comp that he played was pretty cool. And like the video if you liked it. I'll see you in the next one.